Nobody stop that man. Here comes... Bang! Bang! It's good!
All bases. How are we doing, everybody? Good to be here, and hope everybody is having a great Thursday night at the time of this recording, February 5th, 2026, which is crazy to say, but we are here and excited. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in the sports world, of course. We have the NBA trade deadline, which a lot of moves went down. Nothing too serious with the Knicks. They did add a defensive presence, which is certainly something that they needed, and obviously something that the Knicks at this point can use. We'll get into all of it. And we got some baseball news as well. Tarik Skubal reaching arbitration finally. Took long enough, but yes, he ended up settling for the $32 million, and we'll talk about what that means not only for Detroit, but potentially for the Mets down the line. And all exciting things here on All of the Bases. I am your host, Dan Bartels, joined with our producer, Ben, today for the first time. So it's always good to have Ben behind the board doing what he does best. And we're going to go around the bases, do what we do best here on All of the Bases. But before we do, I got to introduce Ben. And Ben, I hope you are doing well. And you went to Fordham with me, and we've been through the trenches together. And it's great to have you producing this show with producing experience. And Ben, how are you?
It's a great day to be on the show with DB. I'll just say that. It's a privilege, an honor to be a part of this with you, Dan. And, really, I think we've gone back a little while now. I mean, technically it's only been 3 years. Believe it or not, it's actually been 3 years since I first met you at our old boss, Bobby's birthday party, if you remember that, back in February of 23, back at FUV at Fordham. And then we just hit it off really from doing demos together, going to the gym together. Sometimes you'd be getting on me for that. I'd be slacking, we've grown and gone on a journey together. And now, you're absolutely a major presence, not only just in the Mets world, Dan, but in the New York sports world at large. And it's a privilege. It's really just so exciting to get to do this with you. And as you are at the Post, we both have some experience. You a lot more than me, but previously I used to work at WFAN / Infinity Sports Network. Infinity unfortunately folded, and there was some restructuring. So we got my team got laid off, for lack of a better term. And right now I'm back at the old stomping grounds where me and DB used to be at FUV, and I am a part-time news updates anchor on FUV, also an editor in the newsroom, helping some of the young Padawans, young kids out. So I've been doing a little bit of everything, but most recently as a producer, I was at FAN and Infinity, which Infinity turned into Westwood One, as Dan knows about. I'm sure many people know about who listen to Odyssey and all that. But I have a background in sports and in news. And, when Dan was describing this project to me, I was so excited to join it, because it's not just sports, even though we both love sports. I love the Knicks, love the Mets, but we also want to talk, pop culture a little bit, maybe talk about the state of things, what's happening in the country this week, not necessarily political stuff, but, kind of just the lay of the land, what's going on in the world, what are people talking about? I'm very excited to get started, Dan.
Me too, Ben. Me too. And it's going to be a fun ride. We're happy to have you along, and we're blessed. And Ben, it's just the beginning, my friend. Don't worry. Just another one of these journeys, and I'm excited to do it with you. And let's talk about things that people are talking about, Ben. You mentioned it. And Lindsey Vonn, people are talking about her. That'll be first base. And Lindsey Vonn, certainly someone who, again, she is going through it. She is 41 years old. She tore her ACL, and she is competing in the Olympics despite tearing her ACL. It's absolutely crazy story. Honestly, it's one of those stories that you have to see how it ends, good or bad, right? And I hate to put it that way, but that's honestly the truth when you're thinking about the whole situation with Lindsey Vonn. For the YouTube audience at home, I want to make it very clear, we did have some issues in the beginning, but we are up and running again, so good to have you guys. And we will play this little Lindsey Vonn video, who she was training. This is her on Instagram today for the YouTube audience at home watching this when we do post this. Yeah, you're seeing her get after it. And it's honestly pretty inspiring to see someone like Lindsey Vonn doing what she's doing. But this article, we'll get through some of it here from the New York Post. It's very, very interesting. Lindsey Vonn yesterday went up in front of the sports world, had a press conference basically saying that she's going to be competing. And there is no doubt in her mind that she's ready to compete. And we'll get the whole scoop here. So Lindsey Vonn's comeback is on a one-day hold after the 41-year-old downhill skier ruptured her left ACL during a crash in Switzerland on Friday. Her first training session included, which is just crazy to say, her first training scheduled for Thursday was canceled due to 7 inches of snow and a forecast of more powder on Milan's Olympia del Profane course. Again, we're not very well versed in the skiing, but obviously when you're dealing with those types of things, it makes a little sense. That news came a day after Vonn announced that she would still be competing in the Olympics despite her setback. Her next opportunity to test her knee comes Friday and Saturday before Sunday's downhill event. So she's competing as soon as the Olympics. They kick off tomorrow is the opening ceremonies out there in Italy. So it's just a crazy, crazy story that there's been now a setback. She's going to see how she goes tomorrow with the training. And this is her first time truthfully training, not on Instagram, as you guys saw. Per the International Ski and Snowboard Federation rules, at least one session must occur prior to the real event. Her head coach, Chris Knight, said Vonn may participate in just one training session. Yeah, don't overdo it. That's the name of the story. So we appreciate this story from the New York Post. Ben, what do you make of the whole Lindsey Vonn stuff, man? I don't think it's very smart that a 41-year-old is going to go out there and test her ACL, but that's what Lindsey Vonn is going to do.
I think it's surreal, Dan, to tell you the truth. I thought it was because it's so common nowadays. I thought it was AI generated when I read the news. I thought it was just someone spreading nonsense. I hate the term misinformation sometimes because it's just used with everything. But sometimes I just thought at first look, I thought it was misinformation. And because all my life, watching the NBA, less so. I mean, I don't think ACL injuries happen quite as much in baseball, correct me if I'm wrong, as basketball. But watching the NBA and watching college basketball for at least a decade now, usually an ACL injury means you'd be out for at least 9 months, and that would be on a speedy recovery. So I don't know. Again, I don't have any of the details. I don't have any inside scoop on what's going on with her medical situation, but I think it's quite extraordinary that she tore her ACL and is training, is working out, is doing all these things as you normally would do preparing for the Olympics. I'm not sure quite how she's doing it. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but usually at this point in the process, she would still be in a wheelchair, no, or still be in crutches.
Yeah, right.
So that's, I mean, not to be blunt, but it's like it's kind of something tells me like, did she take a secret serum or something that Barry Bonds gave her or something like that? I seriously, medicine is definitely advancing. I don't know if she got some top secret, state of the art treatment, but either way, I mean, credit to her. But you obviously, there's the fear of you could easily get seriously injured and worsen the situation out there on the slopes. I've gone skiing a couple of times. I think you mentioned in one conversation we had, Dan, that you went once or twice, or maybe a couple of times.
I'm not great at it, but we're learning.
Yeah, and skiing is, my hat goes off to all the people out there doing that sort of sport. It's quite it's dynamic. It requires a lot of concentration, really quick reaction times, reflexes. It's really you need to be alert at all times, because you can, quite literally, you can have life-altering, life-threatening injury if you are messing around there on the slopes. You know, again, I tip my cap to her, but I'm also kind of bewildered, and I'm unsure how she's really doing that. And I didn't read the full report in. I was actually just reading. It was from the People magazine. It said she completely ruptured her ACL last week at a World Cup race in Switzerland. And then, of course, as we're discussing, saying she still plans to compete. And then her sports medicine surgeon, or I'm not sure if this is her surgeon, but this sports medicine surgeon, Dr. Yair Kissen, told People magazine about the obstacles she could face and what she expected, what can be expected. He said that, you know, this is quote unquote, this is what he said, Dan. In general, I don't think any ACL treating healthcare provider would endorse somebody to go skiing without an ACL. In sports like skiing, in order to ski again or do any kind of planting, pivoting, twisting, or cutting, you need that ACL to be functional. Then he also added the thing to worry about is it's not just about the ligament. This is just one of the main structures holding the knee together. So if one of those main ligaments is not intact, you can risk further injuring the cartilage or the meniscus. And then that has implications to getting an early joint replacement. So it's like, I don't know. Again, I don't know why the doctor also isn't freaking out that she's doing this. Again, my general attitude towards this whole thing is bewilderment. How is this possible? Because usually, as I mentioned when I first started, you're kind of in crutches at this point if you tear an ACL. So she's got to, I don't know. I'm not going to, raise any conspiracy theories, but
Sure.
Maybe she's getting some sort of revolutionary care out there in the Alps in Switzerland that we're not aware of.
No,
But
no,
I'll leave it to you, Dan. What's your take?
It's very interesting, Ben. We got to see. And why does Lindsey Vonn, why does she matter, right? Why are you even hearing her name? It's not because she tore her ACL. We're not big into alpine skiing. We want to make that clear, right? We're all trying to learn, but she's one of the greatest of all time. Like when you really look at it, she honestly is the greatest alpine skier of all time. She achieved
difficult sport, very difficult sport.
Very 84 World Cup wins, 3 Olympic medals, 1 gold, 2 bronze, 20 World Cup titles. She retired in 2019 and she returned to competition in 2024, continuing her career at age 41 with a successful 25 and hopefully, 26, but that remains to be seen. And we'll see what happens at the Olympics opening ceremonies tomorrow. They're 6 hours ahead in Italy, so it's definitely going to be something to see for sure. But that's Lindsey Vonn, and happy we got that out of the way. Let's get to second base, everybody. Second base brings us to Detroit. Second base brings us there because before we get into any of the NBA stuff, which we will, we do want to talk about this. Tarik Skubal reached arbitration today, and Tarik Skubal's bet has paid off. The 2-time reigning American League Cy Young Award winner won his arbitration case today. He'll make $32 million a year, according to the Post's John Heyman. Very, very big day for baseball in a lot of ways because yesterday, for anyone who didn't know, the Detroit Tigers went out and they signed Framber Valdez. They gave him 3 years, $115 million, 38.3 AAV. That is huge because he's making more than Tarik Skubal. Tarik settled for 32. You're making $6.3 more million. You're not a $6.3 million better pitcher, clearly. But having Tarik Skubal settle for this is very, very good for the next generation of baseball. When you're talking about Paul Skeens coming up, who could win 3 or 4 Cy Youngs by the time he is at the end of his arbitration, which is what this is. And for people who don't know, what is arbitration? Well, you get 3 years pre-arb, final 3 years. You're making what the team tells you you're making for the first 3 years, and then you kind of go into these arbitration hearings. And Skubal's in the final one of his career. He's going to be a free agent next year. And this is just, it sets everything up the right way. It sets up Paul Skeens to be paid someday, which is very, very important. If we saw that the arbitrator who comes in and basically says this side or this side, Detroit was holding Skubal to $19 million a year. They said that he was not better than David Price in 2015 at 19.75. So they were holding him to 19. He wanted 32, and that's what he ended up getting. And the arbitrator comes in and says, okay, we have not had a deal between these two sides. I have to pick one of these two deals. Some people think there's like a midpoint and stuff. It's important to highlight the midpoint, $25.5 million to be exact, but you can't pick the midpoint. So the arbitrator comes in and they sided with Skubal today. It's big news for baseball. It's not the biggest news in the sports world right now. It should not be on the priority list. This should be more like a second or more of even like a third base thing, if we're being honest. But just because of the magnitude of the difference in those negotiations from 19 to 32 million, that's $13 million difference. That's the biggest difference we've seen in Major League Baseball history. So we finally got an answer, and that's very, very important. Skubal is worth all of the money in the world. He's arguably the best pitcher in baseball. Despite starting his career with 3 seasons above a 3 ERA, he's led the American League with a 2.39 and a 2.21 ERA in the past 2 seasons. He also struck out 200 batters both of those seasons as well. A third straight Cy Young, if he goes out there and wins it with Detroit, it would be the first since Randy Johnson in 1999 to 2002. Now, very telling when it comes to what Detroit is going to do. They signed Framber. They have Skubal here. They have a really good 1 through 2 out there, and 1 and 2 punch out there in Detroit. You got a 3 in Jack Flaherty. You got a 4 in Casey Mize. You got a 5 in Reese Olson. It's a pretty good 1 through 5. That's a pretty good pitching staff. I like the idea that they are not going to trade trade Skubal, at least to begin the year. But that will change. I think at some point they're going to look at Skubal and say we can get a really good return, and I think that they do. But we have to see, because Detroit is telling us we're competing. That is the whole point of this conversation. Detroit is competing. They're going for it in 2026. They have 2 of the best pitchers in the game at the front of their rotation. They have a really good young team that showed last year they're good enough to win the World Series, but they fell apart. So we will see. What does this mean for the Mets? It means that Skubal is probably hitting free agency, as we've known for months at this point, now that Scott Boras is his agent, and we have to see how the cookie crumbles with Tarik Skubal. But I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think this is too big. But where's Skubal going, Ben? Is he going to be a Met someday?
With MLB's luck, I think he'll be a Dodger, Dan. I think
hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong too, but I think part of got to include that for joking about the Dodgers. But in all seriousness, I think what happened with Tarik Skubal, I think, shows a tension between the Players Association and the owners, and a lot of that kind of building up, I think, unfortunately, could lead. We've talked about this off the air. Could be a lockout coming next year, and I think that's because there's a lot of not to say that there's not going to be inequalities, because of course there's going to be great teams and there's going to be terrible teams in the same year. But what the Dodgers have done with how they built that team, it's like they're building the West Coast version of the evil empire. They've almost become the Yankees at this point, the Yankees West. And I think, when Tarik Skubal was going through that process, I think he's definitely offended by the whole thing. And he may bolt to go to a city with a lot better weather, a city that's a lot flashier, better market, a bigger stage. And, obviously he could still stay with Detroit, but I think it's always difficult for those smaller market teams. I mean, this is a different league, but we're going to talk about it soon, is look at what happened with Giannis. He wasn't traded, but there's been drama with him and staying in Milwaukee. There's been some murmurs for weeks now, and that's because inevitably, Dan, I hate to say it, all of these small market teams, they are just struggling to keep up with the Dodgers of the world, with the Lakers of the world, or what have you, in whatever league. I think it's not a good trend for the league, because if it's just going to be the big market teams every year, then it's almost like, what's the point of having these mid-market and small market teams compete if we know what the outcome is going to be every year? And I'm not a big NHL guy. I root for the Islanders lukewarmly. My uncle's a huge Islanders fan, but in the NHL, what I've always noticed about the NHL usually is there's a lot of parity. There's a lot of competition, really intense, healthy competition, where a lot of times you don't know who's coming out of that conference. I think everyone knows, at least for the division side of things, not necessarily the league, but for the NL West, Dan, I think everyone knows is going to come out of the NL West. And I think for the National League, I hate to say it, but I think we could know who comes out of the National League as a whole. I think that's a very negative trend that's accelerating, that these big market teams are just taking all the players. And that's why we're going to have a lockout, because the owners of the smaller market teams, they are not happy with that, and something's got to give. And I would think it's almost the tensions that are brewing, Dan. It is owner versus player, but it's also small market owners and mid-market owners versus big market owners like Steve Cohen, etc. So there's that tension that's there. So anyway, credit to him for getting his money. I do think it's a little gratuitous, because I'm sure Dan, back in our parents' generation, these players would be making like 70,000, if that. I think sometimes I think about it and I'm like, I can't imagine making, 20 million a year to play a game that I grew up playing and was great at. Like, that'd be a dream come true. And sometimes I just kind of sit back and think with awe that these players, they're getting paid whatever, and then they want more. Now, I can't fault them for wanting to get their money, especially against these owners who have even more boatloads of money. But at the same time, it's like, the greed that's just, and again, I'm not opposed to money or capitalism, but I'm just saying that it's just gotten so out of hand nowadays, where you've got guys, even Juan Soto, who's excellent, but he's making north of 50 million a year. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So it's just part of a larger trend. I gave you my piece there.
Sure.
Maybe filibustered a little bit too long, but
Hey.
It shows a lot of things, Dan. I'll wrap it up with that.
It definitely does, Ben. It definitely does. And we're gonna go off the rails here on some of the, it's totally understood, and it's definitely kind of what this is for, just kind of hashing out some of these things. Let's get to the shortstop segment, and we're gonna have to stop short, ladies and gentlemen, because it was something that occurred this week, and let's get right into it. And it's very interesting, because I don't know what causes these things to happen, for coaches to kind of go off the rails and kind of, I don't know if it's something we can control. I don't think anybody can control, when a bad call, but it's really how you react in these moments. We saw Ole Miss head coach Chris Beard. Chris Beard lost his mind this week. Chris Beard, I don't even know how to kind of start with this, but he's the coach of Ole Miss, and they played Tennessee this week. And Chris Beard, just went off. He absolutely went off. He was
Get tossed. That's a technical foul on Beard, and he's confirmed. Yeah.
So the reason he was so irate, it happened with 6 minutes and 15 seconds left in the game. He believed that it was a one-sided whistle during an 84-66 road loss to Tennessee. Beard certainly earned his money worth with the ejection, screaming and pointing at the referee while being restrained at times, and then later running back onto the court to give his team some parting wisdom. Let's play this one more time.
That'll absolutely. He might get tossed. He's probably going to get tossed. It's a technical foul on Beard. He's confronted.
Why was he so upset? Well, this is what Tennessee, when speaking about Tennessee coach Rick Barnes, he said, quote, "You have a Hall of Fame coach here, first ballot, one of the best that's ever done it," Beard said of his ejection while referencing the coach of Tennessee, Rick Barnes. And I think if you look back at the different spots in his career, he's had to fight for his program and kind of think that's where we're at with Ole Miss right now. Quote, "The free throw differential in this game and the foul differential in this game, just frustrating from a coaching perspective and standpoint. It's never personal. Road teams don't expect to get a friendly whistle in a hostile conference environment. Yet Beard thought the referees took Tuesday's game into their hands too often. Ole Miss is 11-11, 3-6 in the SEC. They committed 27 fouls and just shot 21 free throws, while Tennessee 16-6. So why do coaches get upset? We're going to stop right here. We've seen a lot of coaches get upset in recent memory. I remember there was it was Syracuse, I believe it was against Pitt, way back in the day. Jim Boeheim was pissed, and he ended up getting a double technical, and Syracuse lost the game because of it. Luckily, Ole Miss was already down. They didn't really have to – it didn't cost them much. It was just more for the sake of kind of – you see this in baseball games, getting your money's worth. That's what Chris Beard was doing. But that's kind of the shortstop segment. We're a little short today, if you guys will. So we're just kind of making sure that we are making this happen, getting it to you weekly, twice a week. We're going to iron out the stuff as we go through and some stuff, technicalities, and we appreciate you guys being here.
Can I get my take on that, Dan?
Yeah, sure. Chris Beard.
I just wanted to say, and this might sound like it's out of left field, no pun intended, because all the bases, of course, but I think
it's good.
It's good.
I think that incident, Dan, and I'm very skeptical and critical of artificial intelligence in a lot of sectors of society, but I've talked about this with friends, with my parents, with family, because sometimes I rant about this all the time watching basketball games. It's time to get AI refs. It's time to get AI refs so we don't have people totally debasing themselves, embarrassing themselves, acting like hooligans, walking onto the court, just looking really like a petulant child. Like, no offense, you look like a child out there, man. And to me, it's not worth it. I looked at the score in that video. That was not a close game. This was not in March Madness. It wasn't in the tournament or the conference championship. This is a random, one-off game in a hostile environment, as you mentioned. If we had AI reps, we would have a perfect call every time. There wouldn't be a need for a challenge. And I know the refs are not going to be happy with me across all of the levels of basketball, from AAU to college Division III to Division I to the NBA. But I think it's time for this specific segment of society. I think we need AI in sports, in referees and umpires. That's a whole nother conversation. But then we wouldn't have this silliness, Stan, because it's just like, it's ridiculous. And it's funny. Sometimes my uncle would tell me, and my uncle, he's almost 70 now, and he grew up watching that 69 Mets team. And he would say, back in my day, Ben, I used to love watching when the ump would make a terrible call. They'd start screaming at the manager, would come out, start screaming at the ump. I'm like, well, that's actually not productive. It's meaningless entertainment. And it's so, like, you are lowering your dignity and your reputation when you go out and act like that. It just wasn't worth it, especially in that situation. That wasn't close. So again, I think it's so unnecessary. It's almost barbaric to argue with the refs like that, and it's not needed. And what we need, particularly just for this situation, Dan, we need to implement AI into officiating, in particular in basketball, as well as baseball and other sports. And I know it's a hot take. I know people will be crazy for that, but that's just my view. I had to get that out.
No, I don't think it is at all, because you're seeing the ABS system in baseball. I mean, that's technically robot driven. In basketball, I'm all for it, Ben. I think they get the calls wrong night in and night out. The amount of carry calls that go uncalled.
And travels, just travels too. They don't call travels anymore.
There was one when Bron returned to Cleveland. We talked about it on the last episode. When Bronny had that breakaway dunk after that steal near the half court, he's wide open, and he's taking 6 steps. Like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
No call. So that's just crazy. We wanted to get that out of the way. Chris Beard, some AI stuff. Definitely you see that in baseball, and it'd be interesting to see if that can happen in basketball as well. Let's round third. Let's get ready for home, ladies and gentlemen. And a lot of teams found players in new homes this week in the NBA. There was a bunch of trades across the board specifically. So let's dive into some of these. First, with the New York Knicks, they get Jose Alvarado today. That's number one. I want to get your thoughts, Ben, on the whole Alvarado situation. They did not give up much, I believe, a second rounder and Terry. It wasn't even anything crazy, right? So talk about Alvarado, what the Knicks gave up, and was it a good move?
Yeah, well, it was to be specific, it was in exchange for Dalen Terry and 2 second-round picks.
That's what it was.
That's what your colleague at the Post, Stephen Bondy, he confirmed ahead of the deadline earlier today. And what's interesting is the Knicks had gotten that guy Terry from the Bulls for Yabusele, who had been a solid role player off the bench, who played with energy and spirit and provided some great defensive plays throughout the season. So credit to Yabusele. Thank you for, as a Knicks fan, even though I used to cover the team with FUV, but as a fan, thank you to Yabusele for I think he was a great addition to this roster, and hopefully wish him well in
Yabusele, get Terry in here, and then they trade that guy out and get Alvarado. It's pretty good, Leon.
Right. And credit to Leon Rose for that's a great turnaround, and just finding a way to get that. And they had been, according to another FUV alum from Fordham, who we both know, Chris Persianen, with Clutch Points, he had been talking about this, reporting on these rumors that the Knicks were after Alvarado. He had been talking about this since early December, saying he was on the Knicks radar. They were looking for him. And this is, exactly the kind of player I think they need at this point in their construction of a championship contending team. And especially, I forgot to mention, with Deuce McBride, unfortunately, according to Fred Katz of The Athletic, and as well as James Edwards, Deuce McBride is going to be most likely out until the playoffs. He's got a groin injury, I believe, and he's got to get surgery on that. It's probably going to be out at least 8 weeks. So I think I think it's a really good addition for this team. He's built a reputation as a really good on-ball defender. Could pick up an opponent on full court and just find ways to get under their skin. It's like you're playing My Park. It's like you're in the rec. He's that guy who picks your pocket, as you're just dribbling from half court. He also can provide a little bit offensively. He averages 8 points a game, 3 assists a night, so he can be a playmaker. He's a valuable addition for a team that's going to be missing a key piece in Deuce McBride. And this guy, also forgot to mention, he is a New York native. He went to, I believe, Christ the King. So he loved, I remember I saw him in an interview with the Pelicans. I think it was earlier this year. He loved playing at MSG, and now he's going to get that opportunity night in and night out until whenever this season ends, whenever that may be. So I think this is overall a great trade. Not glamorous, not the most sleek, maybe not the big name that I know who I'm talking about, that some people may have been looking for. But look, Leon Rose and even up to the top, Dolan, I think they are very set with this team right now, at least until the season is over, until whenever that is, until the offseason. They're running with this roster. They wanted to do a little retooling, and that's in the form of getting Alvarado. But Giannis is not, if he would come to the Garden at all, Dan, that wouldn't be until next season, if that could even happen, which is still, I think, in my view, a long shot. So in the meantime, though, in trying to build up and get more depth as they head into the playoffs and hopefully make that run, this is really a smart move, and they got it for really good value. I'll have to add that.
Yeah, no doubt. And he's a former ACC Defensive Player of the Year at Georgia Tech. He signed a two-way contract with the Pelicans in 2021. He's also part of the Puerto Rican national team. So Jose Alvarado is a New York Knick. Welcome back to New York, Jose Alvarado, the Brooklyn boy, going to be balling out at Madison Square Garden. It's a good addition, but let's get to some other additions around the NBA that took place. And we'll start here in being New York related and New York based. We got to stay in New York and talk about the former Brooklyn boy and Alvarado. Brooklyn lost one of their boys today, Cam Thomas. The Nets are waiving Cam Thomas, the microwave scorer that he is. He just couldn't cut it here in Brooklyn. And the era of Cam Thomas is officially over. The 24-year-old is entering free agency. He can be picked up by any team. After the Post reported on January 19th that Brooklyn and Thomas were headed for a divorce, ESPN was the first to report that it had been made official. Thomas was averaging 15.6 points per game. After Brooklyn had offered Thomas multiple deals this summer, a 2-year, $30 million contract with a team option, or a 1-year, $9.5 million pact with incentives up to $11 million, he rejected both. Thomas inked a $5.99 million qualifying offer, and that was the beginning of the end in Brooklyn. Thomas suffered 4 left hamstring injuries since the start of last season, the latest on November 5th. Since his December 27th return to the court, he'd lost his starting job. I don't know where he goes. I don't know if he gets picked up. This is a guy who's dropped 40 points. It feels like there's some nights where he'll have no assists and he'll just be putting up straight 40-point games. You're like, oh my goodness. But then you see other nights where you're watching these Brooklyn basketball games. They got blown out the other night by 53 to the Pistons. They were scoring on their own hoop. The Nets are a mess. And I like Jordi Fernandez. I think he's a good coach. I think they have a decent core. But a lot of nights, it's guys like Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. just playing pickup. And you're not developing anybody. Nobody's developing right now. Maybe Igor Demin, and you got Danny Wolf and Nick Claxton, and you got guys like, Noah Clowney, who are very good as well. But I don't know, man. I'm not a big fan of this move in particular. I think Cam Thomas is a really good player, and we'll see where he ends up. But we'll get off that. Ben, I got to ask you about some of these other moves in the NBA as we round third and get ready to head for home. So there was some other moves in the NBA over the past couple of days. So today at 3 o'clock at the time of this recording, a couple hours ago, NBA trade deadline came and went. And Giannis is still with Milwaukee. As you mentioned, that was the big news everybody was waiting to see. Was he going to the Timberwolves, Miami, Golden State, New York? He stays in Milwaukee at least through the summer. Other moves this week. Mavericks sent Anthony Davis to the Wizards in a multiplayer blockbuster. The Golden State Warriors acquired Kristaps Porzingis from the Atlanta Hawks for Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield. The Cleveland Cavaliers earlier this week landed James Harden from the Los Angeles Clippers for Darius Garland. The Utah Jazz got Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Memphis Grizzlies in a multi-team deal. The Boston Celtics got Nikola Vucevic from the Chicago Bulls for Anthony Simons. The Toronto Raptors got Chris Paul in a 3-team trade. And some other moves, as we mentioned, and you touched on very accurately. Gershon Yabusele going to the Bulls, who Knicks traded less than, 12 hours. What was that turnaround? I mean, geez. And then they flip him for Alvarado. So, a lot of moves there, Ben, and specifically keeping it with the Knicks and keeping it here in New York. There's a couple moves. We saw the Detroit one, too, dealing Jaden Ivey. That was a little weird. But for me, seeing Boston add a Vucevic after losing a guy like Porzingis, and now they have a big man. To me, Ben, I'm a little nervous. I'm not nervous of the Cavs. I want to get your opinion on them in the East now that they have James Harden. And then what do you think of the Celtics? I mean, those are like the two teams at this point. The 76ers traded Jared McCain. Like they're not competing at all. So what do you make of those moves with Boston and then the Cavs?
Yeah, well, I think Vucevic kind of fills a Porzingis-sized hole that was missing in that offense, spacing out the floor, knocking down a three. Maybe not as strong defensively as KP was for Boston, but I think it's going to help Boston be potent offensively certainly be a team that is going to be formidable on that end. And Knicks fans, people who have covered the Knicks, they're familiar with this Boston team, obviously facing them in the playoffs that last year. And I'm telling you, Dan, the same thing could happen this year. I mean, this Boston team is tied with New York right now for second, tied for second and third, both 33-18. That may have changed now. I'm not sure because they may have just finished the game. But as of right now, they are still tied at second in the East, with 4.5 games behind the Detroit Pistons. So I think really with Boston, they found a way to mesh with the absence of Tatum, and now with Tatum coming back soon, I think this team. I part of me hates to say it as a Knicks fan. This team could come out of the East. That's something that should be considered. And we may be seeing a couple of bangs from Tatum in the playoffs. God forbid. But you know what kind of player he is, and the impact that he has on the floor. I mean, he's basically an MVP candidate, arguably the best player in the league. I think Boston is going to be much more. We came into this season, we thought they would kind of be written off for this year, especially in regards to the Knicks. But I think Boston is going to be serious competition.
What do you make of the Cavs getting 36-year-old James Harden?
Yeah, I think now some may disagree with me on this, or some may this may age poorly. But I think the Knicks have had the Cavs number for years now, ever since that 2023 series, that first round where they won in 5 games. It just I'm not. I'll believe it when I see it with the Cavs. That's my response with Cleveland. They haven't gotten over the hump. They haven't made a conference finals since all these years since they really constructed that roster with Donovan Mitchell. As we know, the Knicks beat them on Christmas Day. That was 126 to 124. It was a close win, close game. But with Cleveland, I am certainly. I'll tell you this: Boston is a lot more formidable than Cleveland. I'll say that.
Cool. I take your word, Ben, and I definitely agree. And that's kind of the news with the NBA trade deadline. It was a very active trade deadline. It was one that I think a lot of us just sit back and say, was it worth the time? Are these trades really worth anything? It's tough to tell. I think a lot of these teams, if you want the truth, are just making trades for the sake of making trades. I don't see much with baseball. Maybe it's just different because every trade is calculated in baseball. Every trade makes sense for the most part. You don't see that, at least this time around, in terms of what we saw at the NBA trade deadline. But we'll see, guys. As always, we will keep it going. And we're going to round third. We're going to get ready to head for home. And Ben, we're going to bring you up one last time and kind of get ready to get out of here. But want to get your opinion because we did get an MLB The Show cover over the past couple of weeks. And we saw Aaron Judge is going to be the cover of MLB The Show 26. There's a video out there now that we can see MLB The Show 26 and its first renderings of a gameplay, and people are starting to get excited about the game coming out. And to me, it just looks like the same copy and paste game every single year with MLB The Show. I love MLB The Show, but I just don't know. There's a certain level when it comes to video games. Like we see it. How long is it taking to make GTA 6? I mean, it's like every single year it just keeps getting played. So I have a hard time believing that they can get much better with their graphics, but can you change something up every year? So that's kind of my plea to MLB The Show. And then get your thoughts, Ben. I know you're a 2K guy, and we tend to play 2K from time to time. What was your favorite NBA 2K?
That's a good question. First, let me start with MLB, Dan. I think one valid criticism of MLB The Show is there's just, it's like the same skin, the same UI, the same format every year. Where it's I don't know if there's been that much difference since even MLB The Show 1, Dan. For seriously, like if you took 26 or let's say 25 and then 20, I don't know if there's a ton of difference there, because it really hasn't changed that much from year to year. It's just slight graphical improvements, maybe a couple of retooling in certain areas and making the dynamics a little more improved. But overall, especially when it comes to Road to the Show, it's like I have not seen in 10 years that much difference in Road to the Show. Now, I know some people, it's like, they don't want the cutscenes, they don't want the storylines. I get it, because the 2K My Career cutscenes and storylines, they can be very, very cringeworthy to say the least. But I think it's just the general feeling of a stagnant, a lack of development with MLB The Show, especially with the cover. I think it's kind of redundant. I mean, again, I'm a Mets fan as you are, but having Judge on the cover again, it's like I don't, well, I guess I was going to say, I don't think you should be on a cover twice as a cover athlete for a major league game in any sport, unless you are like one of the best players ever, which I guess some people would say Judge is. So that's fair. But at the same time, it's like it almost seems kind of lazy to me.
Yeah.
So that's my take with MLB. With 2K, Dan, I love that you asked that question. I feel like 2K really peaked in terms of the park design, the kind of the just general gameplay, the lack of cheese, as people like to call it. I think it actually peaked with NBA 2K17 with Paul George on the cover. That was when I think the defense was most realistic. I think the shot making was also relatively fair. It felt like a well-rounded game, which, even though we play it all the time, as you mentioned, I don't think sometimes it feels skewed too much to either side, either offensively or defensively. Either you can't make a shot or it's so easy to make a shot. And I think 2K17 was a perfect balance of fun with realism, with a general fairness, where you were playing the game and it didn't feel like it was out of your hands already, no matter how good you played. Which is, an issue now. You can be playing the game of your life, and then you can have this guy who has a badge who is draining every shot from the corner because, he has a certain badge. That's the way it is nowadays, where it's almost set up for you to fail in that way. Yeah. So, I'm going to say 2K17. 2K16 was great as well.
Yep.
But that's 17, fine. And that's with Curry. 2K16 was also great. I'd also want to add, honestly, the first few 2Ks of the PS4 and Xbox One generation, Dan, from 14 to 17, those were great. But especially 16 and 17, but 14 and 15, those are classics as well. 14 had LeBron on the cover, doing his powder thing, his tradition before games. And then Kevin Durant on 15. I think out of that,
even 2012, putting Jordan on the cover.
Oh yeah, well, I didn't play 2K back then. I had a Wii back in.
Right.
I went from the Wii straight to the PS4. So my first game was 2K14. But I'd say 2K14 through 17. Those games hold a kind of a special nostalgia in my heart. But especially 2K17, that felt to me the most well-rounded, most fleshed out version. So.
Yeah, 2K12 for me was on an iPad, Ben. So I got to be honest. Like, yeah, I hear you on that. Wii generation, PS4, that jump. I think 360, snuck its way in there. Xbox 360 for a little bit. Little Modern Warfare 3, little Terminal, great map. So these are all things I think we'll kind of incorporate. Ben and I we take pride in being well-rounded and kind of being able to talk about different things. That's why we named the podcast All the Bases. So we get the sports stuff. I think we did a great job. We got the Olympics coming up, opening ceremonies tomorrow. The games have already started. I want to make that clear. The U.S. women's national team got a win today over Czechia. So very interesting to see that the games are already going. I know curling has been going for a little while. So even though the opening ceremonies are officially tomorrow, you do get, some of these games before. Czechia. I don't even know. So that's kind of where we're at. But congratulations to the U.S. women's national hockey team. Great to see. It's a country in Europe right above Austria. So Czechia. You learn something new. You learn some geography too. It's the Czech Republic. I don't know why they should have just said that.
Yeah, Czech Republic. I should have.
Right.
I'm a little. I used to want to be a geography major, but way back when I was in high school. But I realized you can't do much with that major. But I could be the geography guy, Dan, for the podcast.
No, do they not call it the Czech Republic anymore? Is it Czechia? I don't know.
As far as I know, it's Czech Republic. So.
Right. Yeah, a little weird. Giannis tweeted today or put it on Instagram, legends don't chase, they attract. So Giannis, yes, that's kind of the big news, that he is staying in Milwaukee. We got the Skubal stuff. He is staying.
I'll say in response
Detroit.
to Giannis. Sorry, Dan. I'll say in response to Giannis, good luck with that. That's what I'll say. Good luck attracting the talent.
No, definitely. And then lastly, Greg Olson's brother, Chris, he unfortunately died at 42 today of brain cancer. So very unfortunate with Greg Olson, an all-time legend in the NFL world, no doubt. Anyway, guys, this was another great episode of All the Bases. We're trying to work through some stuff. We will bring you improvements weekly. We're trying, and we certainly improved bringing Ben on this time, and certainly we'll have him producing moving forward, and he does a great job, and happy to have him here. And guys, just we'll try to bring you 2 episodes a week. We'll do our best, and we're looking at Mondays and Thursdays. I don't know, Ben. We could figure that out moving forward. Maybe we throw a weekend in there instead to cover everything. But I like the beginning of the week to kind of wrap up from the weekend, and then a Thursday getting ready for the weekend to kind of sit here and say, okay, we'll see what happens with the Olympics. Baseball stuff, I mean, we're just getting ready for spring training. We'll cover a little bit on the next episode as we get ready for spring training officially. And all really, really good stuff. We'll look more into some of these other niche stories, guys. It was more kind of last second with some of those. So we just wanted to cover the main sports topics with the deadlines that are going on. But Ben, another great episode, my friend. And we will be back on another episode of All the Bases coming to you live very, very soon. Thank you all. I'm your host, Dan Bartels. That's Ben Oppenheimer. And we will see you again soon. Have a great night, everybody. Yes, sir.